Hello there guys. Now in this video I'm going to show you how to build a CRUD application using form objects and modal wire elements in LiveWire 3. So in this project you're going to learn about how to integrate modal wire elements using Alpine.js, and as well as you get to learn the form objects which were introduced in LiveWire 3, and so many other items you're also going to learn along the way. Now, this is a simple application. It's a book library system, which of course does or enables the users to add, view, edit, and delete books from their personal library. So let's begin. So this is the demo. So the first thing here you can do is you can add a new book, and by adding a new book, of course, you just come here and type a book. So let's say, for example, you want to add a book about, let's say, Java programming. So for example, so you have Java programming like this, and then here you can have the author. So let's say the author is Brian, and then the journal here is programming like this. Right, so once you do that, here you have a calendar whereby you can get to choose when the book, of course, was published. So let's say, for example, we say it was published on October 4th. Like this. Now when you're done adding your details, you can just come here and of course add the given book. Now before adding the given book, let me show you also something. Let's say, for example, you also missed this field. Let's say that field doesn't have any item here. So there's also the validation method that will be there, which will tell you that the book form outer field is required. And this is now the concept of the form objects within LiveWire 3. Now, so here, let me just add back the name. And here now I can click, of course, add the given book like that. So we're going to add the given book like that. And then using the polling, which is LiveWire 3 concept, is going to make that message disappear. Next, you can see there's an edit button here. That means here you can edit that given book. For example, you can edit this one to C, and it also has the validation. So for example, if you miss a field here and you try to update the book, of course the form how the field is required, as well as if you missed for example programming, you're also going to have something like that using the form objects. So here you can click update the book, and the book will be updated respectively. Now, as well as you can just come here and delete. So for example, if you want to delete this particular book, you can as well delete that book and it will be deleted successfully. So this is just a simple application that you can utilize, or you will be able to learn, of course, the CRUD functionality within LiveWire 3, and as well you also get to learn the modal wire elements such as this one here, whereby you can do something like this. Now another thing here you need to know is that I'm using TailwindCSS for this particular styling of my application. Right, so let's get started. All right, now let's get started by setting up the project. So here we are going to install Laravel and as well as LiveWire 3. So for us to install Laravel, I'm going to use the composer since it's the one that I have. Okay, so I'm going to have composer create, and then we're going to have project, and then here I'm going to have Laravel/Laravel, and then we have book, and then the library. So that is the title of my given project like this. So I'm going to hit enter, whereby is going to create for me the given LiveWire project. Remember, I'm in my XAMPP and then htdocs, and htdocs of course is where you want your PHP projects to be at. That is if you are using, of course, the XAMPP, right? So this one will take a minute for it to install. All right, now since we have our Laravel installed, you can as well go ahead and install the LiveWire 3. And here I'm going to run composer require, and then here we're going to have LiveWire/LiveWire, and then LiveWire like that. Then I'm going to hit. Now before that, we should let's sit in into our project. Before that, so our project was book library. I just forgotten about that. So here it's library, then like that. Now, since you're in library, we can just open the project by running code and then the dot sign here. So we're just going to open this and then I can close the previous text editor like this. Okay, now this is the project so far, the book library. So I'm going to open my terminal again. Okay, so now I can go ahead here and install the LiveWire by running composer require, and then here you're going to have a LiveWire, and then here this is LiveWire like that. Because now LiveWire, of course, is normally installed within our Laravel project. So I'm going to hit enter there, and then we're going to have our LiveWire installed. Okay, now since we have LiveWire 3.1 installed, we can go ahead and run this command php artisan LiveWire, and then here we're going to publish the asset. So I'm going to run that LiveWire, and then we're going to publish the LiveWire assets by using that command. So that command is going to do that. Right, so the LiveWire assets have been published. Now we can go ahead and set up the database. All right, now in this section you're going to set up the database, and for us to set up the database we need to configure our .env file. The .env file is this one here, whereby it has different items. We have DB connection, we have DB host, the port, the database, username, and password. In this case, the password is empty, so we're going to leave it as it is. We also have the database, which we're going to change. So this database, I'm going to change this to book library. So that is the database. I'm going to change that one. And then here, I'm going to create the table within this database book library. So the table is going to be php artisan. And then here we're going to say make migration. And then here I'm going to say create. And then books underscore is going to be table like that. So the moment I hit enter here, what it's going to do is going to make that given migration, whereby it is going to create for us this given table here. Now within this table here, we are going to have different things we are going to update. One of them we are going to update is table, whereby I'm going to have this first table, which is going to be string like this, and then here I'm going to have title. I'm going to copy this title, and then I'm going to paste this one. So the next one is going to be within our table. We're also going to have the author of the given book. I copy paste the same, and here we're going to have journal of where the book belongs to. The next one I'm going to have is the published date, but the data type is going to change to date. And then here I'm going to have this as published date, so underscore date like that. So that is what we have here. So ID, title, author, journal, published date, and timestamps, just like you saw within my demo illustration. Now here I'm going to, the last thing we're going to do, of course, is to run the migration. So here I'm going to run php artisan, and then I'm going to say migrate like this. Now, the moment I hit migrate, is going to ask me if I wish to create this database, because it is not aware of this database so far. So here I'm going to hit yes, and then of course it is going to migrate other tables, of course, the default, with the last one being the one that we have just created. So now if I come here and try to reload this again here, okay, so this is the database, here. And within inside it, we have the books, which of course the field that we have created. Now the next part here we just need to do is to update the model. So because once we get to create any given table, there's always a model that is associated with that given table for things such as establishing relationships, as well as the protected fillable for mass assignment and so forth. So here within your terminal here, I'm going to have this php design, and then I'm going to say make a model like this, and then the model is going to be book.php like this. So here, once that is done, we can come here and locate for book.php, which is now our model. Sorry, what did I just do? Oh, sorry, this is okay, we should not have that. This should be PHP artisan make model, and then the model is book. Okay, so here we come and check. So this one is book.php. So the book.php here, we are going to do several things. So we are going to have protected. So the protected here is this one here, and then we're going to say at fillable, which is equal to first field is going to be title like this, and then you're going to have outer. Remember, these are the fields that we just add within the table, but now we are assigning them in our model, and then we're going to have published then underscore date. Now what you need to know here is that apart from these given fields that we have now placed within our protected fillable, even if somebody else tries to add any other item within our table here within our database book library, that is not going to happen because these values are protected within this fillable here, and that is what we have within our book PHP. Now moving away from the database setup, we can now come and create the LiveWire components within our ongoing book library project. So here, how do we create the LiveWire components? So we're going to start with the book component, and then we'll continue from there. So here I'm going to run this command here, php artisan, and then here I'm going to say make a live wire, and then here I'm going to have book, and then here I'm going to give it like this. So php artisan make live wire, then book component, and then once we do that, we're going to hit enter. So what this is going to do is going to create two files. Actually, one is the class and the other one is the blade. So for example, here within LiveWire 3, we only have app and then LiveWire and then the book component like this. And then within our blade here, we can locate it under the resources, and then the resources, the views, and then LiveWire, and then we have our book component blade like that. So those are the two files we have. Right, so once we have that set, now we can start adding some logic within our book component. So let me hit Control P. So within our book, which is the class of course is for logic, while the blade is for the presentation. So here, remember within our given demo project, we had, for example, the model pop-up and so many and so other functionalities that I showed you within that demo project. So here I'm going to start with some here, and the first thing I'm going to do here is we're going to start with what we call properties, and properties are what define variables that you're going to use when you want to access them within your view. So for example, the first one is going to be public, and then I'm going to have a book form like this, and then I'm going to have this given variable, which is book form like that. So this book form here, this is a form object that we are going to use when we are going to create the form object component in just a few. So just hold on. So this book form object is going to handle the logic of creating the form and as well as validating our given form. Now down there, we're going to have public, and then here we're going to have something that says is model, and then it's model open like that, and then here we're going to give it to false. Now from the understanding of that statement, this one means that this given code here is going to handle the visibility of the model. For example, we saw when the model is open or when the model is closed. So we are going to handle that when by using that given property. The other properties we are going to have is public, then here we're going to have books like that, and then here I'm going to have public, and then I'm going to introduce another property here, which is going to be editing book ID, like that. And here I'm going to set this one to null, like this. So what this basically means is that this editing ID is, you remember when let me just show you this. Now, as you can see from this given project, for example, when I click add new book, now when it is not add the new book, but this should be editing. So when I'm editing this book, now the moment I click edit, there's an ID which has been found for this given book, and then the details of that book that I want to edit. Now when I'm currently editing this particular book, there's an ID which we call it an editing book ID, which is the ID of the book that is being edited. And that's what we have here. Right, now once we are done with this, so these are the properties that we are going to set, and we are going to use them within our component here. So the first function here we're going to have, of course, is the public function, and this is going to be the mount. And then here we're going to have this. So within the mount here, what you're going to do is that you're going to initialize the form when the component is loaded. Of course, what you know with the mount, especially with our Vue.js projects that we have done before, is that the mount is always used to initialize a component for the first time when it is loaded within your given browser. So that is what mount, when you hear something to do with the mount. So here we're going to have this, and then here we're going to have book form, and here we're going to say is equals to, so this is new, and then here we're going to have book form, like this, and then here I have this, and then this is book form, like that. So what I mean here is that this book form, I'm assigning it new book form, and then we are calling the form. So basically what we mean here is that the moment we get to create the form object, we are going to call that form object, so that now our form, now the moment when we click the add new, the form can pop up, and in this case you can see here, let me just show you this again. So you can see here, the moment I click now add new book, there's a modal pop-up here. And of course, when you talk about the mount is when, of course, the moment this particular component is loaded. That is what we mean here, and you can see what we have within our form. All right, so that is what we have within the public function mount. Now we're also going to have another function here, and this function here is going to be public function. Sorry, this is public function. So let's just have this one there. So we're going to have another public function here, which is going to do some things here. So the first part is you're going to reset the form, like this. So this one is going to reset the form when we are done with either adding the book or, of course, the editing of our book. So this is going to be this. You're going to use this keyword, and you're going to say this book form, which is going to be equal to new, and then this book form, like this, and then here we're going to say this, and then we're going to pass book form, like this. So you're going to close that one that way. So basically what we are doing here, we are resetting the form to its initial state once we are done with the adding the book. For example, when you add the book here, or let's say, for example, we take the editing and then we try to edit React.js for dummies, and let's say we do something like that, and we update this. You can see now when the moment that our book is updated, this particular form has been reset, so that now you can, of course, continue editing other books. So that is what we mean there. Now we are So that is now, so we are calling our form, and then of course we are saying this book form, which is a form object that we are going to create in a few. So let's go to the part of the Alpine JS function, whereby we are going to say here public function. So we're going to have public function, and then here we're going to say show model. So we have something like this, show model like this, and then here this is what we have. So this is what we have here. So within our show model here, we're going to have this. So we're going to say is model open. So you're going to check if the model is open, and here we're going to set true, like that. Remember, by default we set the model to be false once it is open. When the component, of course, is loaded for the first time, the model open is false, so that when a user clicks add the book, the model is open, and then it can show. Of course, now the form can be loaded. So that is what, so that function just does that. Now after this one, we're going to have another one here. So let me just copy this. So here you're going to have going to have first that one there, and then this one I'm going to say close model, like this, and then here I'm going to say, so here the close model, of course, now here we're going to check, we're going to enable this one, which is going to be false, like this. So the model is open, which is false, and then we're going to have another one here. So here we're going to say this, and then editing book ID, whereby we are going to set it to null. So basically this means that we are going to close the model, and then we are going to reset the editing state of that given model, because the moment we close it, then now it means that the form is no longer being edited. So that's why we are setting the editing book ID to null. Now next is you're going to have another function here, and then this function is going to be save book. So save book here is going to be this way. So you're going to validate the form data based on the rules we have defined in the form that is in the book form. And in the book form, we are going to create that form object just after this. So here I'm going to say this validate, and then here I'm going to call that validate. Then there's something here I'm going to do here, which is I'm going to use an if statement here to say this get error bug, which is a PHP function. So error bug, we're going to have it that way, and then here we're going to say is empty, like this. And then now what we'll do here is we are checking if this given form here is, that is, we want to check if there are any validation errors, and if there are validation errors, then we are going to keep the form, in other words, we're going to keep the model open if there are any errors that we're going to get. So here we're going to have this, and then we're going to say is model open, and then here we're going to set this one to true, like this. Just have it there, and then here we're going to close, and then here we're going to return. So the return statement here is going to return if there are any errors within our form. And basically this is just what I showed you when on that given demo, whereby we clicked. In case we have not filled any field, it showed an error. So that should be handled like that. And then of course, if there are no errors, we now go here and define a variable which is saved, and then you're going to say add this, and then here we say book form, and then here we're going to save given information. So that I believe that is easy to understand. Now, if the book is saved or was saved successfully, you saw us flashing a message. So here we're going to say if, so we're going to pass this variable here, the one above, because it is the one that is now responsible for saving our book. So here I'm going to say session, and then here we're going to have session flash, and then of course pass the message there, and then of course we pass our message. So here we say the book added successfully, like that. Right, so that is what we have there. So that is the book is saved successfully, and then once the book is saved successfully, you can come down here and then you can say is model is we pass is model open, and then here we're going to set this one to false, because basically that means that we can now close the model after successful save, and then down here that is what we get to do here. Right, so once we have closed the model, then that is all, and then now we can proceed to something else. So I believe now you're able to understand. Just to recap this again, here we are validating the given form using the validate function within our PHP. And of course, here we are checking if there's any errors within our form. If there are errors within our form, we are going to call this is model open, which is true. Then we are going to return what are the errors. And these errors, of course, they are coming from the form object if somebody doesn't fill a certain field. Then here we have saved, whereby we are checking if the book of course is saved. Here we can come and add a conditional whereby we say if the book has been saved, then flash this message and close the model. And I believe that is easy to understand. Right, so now once that is done, we can have another function here, which is going to be, because this is a CRUD application, you're going to have edit book like this, and then here we're going to pass the ID of the book that we want to edit. So down here we're going to have edit book. So here the first part here we're going to define this variable, which is book, and this variable of course you know it is a property because you already defined it. Sorry, it's not this one here. Actually that one is the one which is within our table, of course. Okay, so here we define this variable, and here we are going to say a book, and then we are going to find the ID of the given book like this. So once we find the book in the database by the given ID of that given book, here we're going to say we're going to use this keyword, and here we're going to call our form object, which is the book form, and here we're going to fill our form with the given data of the ID of the book that we have found within that database. So here we're going to say to array like this, and then we have something like this. So basically what we are saying here is that we are going to fill the book form with the data of the found book. So we find the book within our database and we fill our form with that given data from the database. If that's easy to get. And then here we are going to say this, we are going to call is editing. Remember this editing book ID, which you are going to set it to the ID of the book that we have found. Basically what we mean here is that we are now passing the ID of the found book with the ID of the book we are currently editing. That is what we mean there. And then finally here we are going to have this, and then we are going to call is model, so like that, and then here we set this to true like that. So once we get to do that, I believe now you're able to understand. So these methods have to follow each other the way they are. We find the book within the database, we fill our form with the data we have found from the database, and then here we set the ID of the book we have found with the editing book ID. So that means that we are now, this is the ID of the book that we are currently editing, and then here we are saying the model is open, which is true, so that now we can now edit our given book. So after doing that, we are going here to now go into public, and then here we're going to have the public function, and then here we're going to update our given book, and here we're going to have this. So here we're going to edit the book, So for us to edit our book, of course, we saw us doing things such as validation. So we are going to validate the form data based on the rules that we have defined in the book form. That is the form object. So here we're going to have this book form. That is, we are going to call that form, and then we are going to validate with the rules that we are going to define in our form object, which we are going to create in the next section. So here I'm going to have if, which I'm going to say, actually this is the same thing that we did here. So here basically what we said here is that we are checking if there are any errors within our form, and if there are any errors, we are going to keep the form open or the model open, so that we can let the user know that there are errors and these errors needs to be corrected. So I'm just going to copy that and paste it here because it is one and the same thing, right? So here we keep the model open and then return any errors if they are there. Now once we do that, we just come here, just beneath here, and then now here we're going to say we're going to pass that variable to the model, and then here we're going to find the currently book that we are editing. So this, and then here we pass the editing book ID like that. So here we are now finding the book in the database using the book editing ID, because now the moment you click edit, of course we get the book that we want to edit. So down there, once we do that, we can now update the book record with the new form data, because now we have gotten the book that we are currently editing by using the editing book ID property. And then here we want to do something like this. So here we want to say book, and then here we're going to say update, and then here we're going to say this, and then book form like that. And then here we're going to have to array like this, because here the array is, of course, we are saying update the book record here. So we validate, of course we want to validate before we update the book data fields. And then here we are checking the errors if there are any errors there, and then here we are finding the book by the ID of the editing book, and then here we are going to update that given book within our book form. And that's all we are going to do there. So that now once we are done with this, we can now come here and say at this, and then here we're going to say editing book ID, which is equal to null. So equal to null here, basically we want to reset the book editing ID to null after we now update the given book. And then here we're going to lastly do something here. We are now going to flash the message of saying that. So here we'll have the message like this. So here we're going to say book updated successfully. Okay, and that's what we have there. So once the book has been successfully updated, we can now reset the given book form. So here we're going to call the book form, and here we are going to call this function which we already defined before. It is that one there. And then here we're going to reset that, and then here we close the model by saying is model, and then here we're going to set it to false like that. So I believe that is easy enough to understand, because here once we find the book, we feel here we update the book with the new data here, and then here we're going to now to reset the editing book ID to null, because we have now updated the book. And then here we flash the message with the updated book successfully, and we reset our form to the initial state, and then here we close the model like that. So the last function here is just to have the public function, and then here we call the delete we define it this way, and then here we are passing the ID, the ID of the book. So here we say book. We find the book ID here, like this, and then here we delete our given book like that. So here we can now flash this session, which should be this way. Then actually we should just copy this. I don't know why I'm writing all this. Just copy this and paste it here and just change some things. So book deleted successfully, and that's what we have there. And don't forget that here we have this render function here. So we need to have that render function like that. Did we import this one? Div, we have not imported it, so it needs to be imported like that, right? And that's what we have. Now there's an error that is coming here because you have not created this form object, because you have had me talk about the book form. So let's create this form object. Now, what are form objects? In LiveWire 3, one of the new features that were introduced is the concept of form objects. And form objects is their way to encapsulate form data and validation rules in a single object. So this one makes it easier to manage form data in LiveWire components. And basically, one of the roles of form object is to encapsulate form data, of course, to handle validation. And basically, what I love about form objects is that you can define validation rules directly in a form object, and you can keep your, of course, your validation logic separate from your component logic. You can see here when you look at the book component, on the save book here, we don't have, for example, this validate, this is required, and so forth. We just call this validate, and it knows where to get this given validation rules. So when I kept saying we are calling this validate, somebody would be asking, but where is the validation rules, or where are the validation themselves? So that is what we are now doing in this particular part here. So here we are going to just begin with this, and so let's just get started. So this one here, you can see there is an error, so this should be at this, I believe. Okay, so that is what we have. So for this error to go away, which is book form, because it can't find this anywhere, now we are now going to create a form object just like this. So to do that, this is what we need to do. So come here and run your PHP artisan, and then here you're going to say LiveWire, and then we're going to have form. Let's just attach this. So form, and then book form like that. So we have something like that, and then we click and enter. Now you can create the book form by manual, but this is the preferred way. So we have the book form, which is extended within the LiveWire, and then the form. So that is the form object there. Now within this form object here, we can of course start by several things. So the first one we're going to define is the form properties that we are going to use. So here I'm going to have public, and then here I can have title like that, and then here we also have public, and then here we'll have outer, here we'll have public, and then here we'll have journal. Remember, this is what is within our table that we created earlier, and then here we have the published date with the underscore. So those are the form properties, and then here we can now come down here and define the validation rules for the form fields. So here we're going to use protected, and then here we're going to pass, so that's the function, and then here we have rules like this. So within these rules, they're going to be in array format. So here we can have them. So here this should be return, So we have return. Now inside this return here is whereby we are going to define this validation logic. So here we are using the associative array, and here we have the first one is required like this, and then we just copy this. So this one can copy like that. You're going to have several, and also copy another one for the published date. Okay, so I changed this one to outer because we have outer, and then here I'm going to change this to journal like this, and then here we are going to have the published dates. So we are going to have something like that. So all of them, they are all required, and we have them as such. Now this one for the published date, I'm going to have, it's going to be date, because here we are requiring the date. So we're going to have it required and then this date. Now once we do that, let me close this one like that. And then here we're going to have something here. So here I'm going to have public, then you're going to have function like this. So the function is going to be save. So this is save function, and then within this save function is I'm going to call this validate like that. So this validate, it will validate the form data against the defined validation rules, which are this one. And this is one of the concepts in LiveWire 3, whereby you can define your validation rules in a separate function, and then your work is just to come and use this function to call this validate, and then of course it is going to validate the form data against these defined rules. Now after that one, within the same function save, we are also going to handle the save logic for our data. So here I'm going to call the model, then I'm going to say create, and then here we're going to have this. So here within this model here, we're going to have the first one is title. Let me just copy some of this. Here we're going to have, so you're going to have title, and then you're going to say, this is what you're going to say. So you're going to have this keyword, and then here we're going to say this title like that. So I can just copy this and paste for these other ones like that, journal as well as for published date. So this one, I changed this one to outer, and as well I also changed this one to journal, and then I also changed this one to published date, which is that one there like that. So basically here is very simple, because we are just now calling this given property, so that when the person types any item within our given form, of course this model is going to be called. And remember, we created it here within, and then we have our protected fillable, which has the mass assignment for filling our database or given a table. So that one we need to close it that way. And then down here, I'm going to return true like this. I'm going to return something true like this. So the return true indicates that this is a successful operation, and of course everything went well. Let's import this model so that this error can go away, right? So that is what we have. And once we do this, we can come here and have another function which is going to reset our given form. So here we have function, and then here we say reset form like this, and here we are going to be setting our form. So here we're going to say this title, and then we say like this. So I can just copy this and paste it like this. So here we have, of course, the order. We reset the order like that, and here we have journal like that, and then here we also reset the published date, which is something like this. So this published date here, we're going to set it to null like that. So the other ones are going to be reset to empty, and of course for our published date we are going to set it to null because this date is different from what we have here. So this is function, so we are going to reset it to null like that. So for our published date. Okay, so that is what we have, and this is now our form object that we're going to use or that is going to be used. So we can come here, and where we have this one here, we can import this form object like that, so that these errors will go from our book component. And now what we need to know is that when we keep calling the form, for example saved, and then we say this book form, is in other words, we are calling this our form object here to save our book by calling this model here, and then our book gets saved, and then this return true indicates that it is a success. It means that, for example, when we come to save book, here we first check if there are any errors within our form, so that here when the book gets saved here, the return is successful when it is true. If it is not successful, the form is, this is the return that is going to be returned here. So you need to take note of these two returns like that. And that is our form object. Now, since we are now done with our book component, which was the class, and we did some few functions here, we wrote few functions, that is of course the CRUD functionality. So here we also did the book form, which is the form object here. Now something I also need to remind you is that, remember, there is this code here, which of course this property is defined within the form object, which is this one, and then we define this variable here, so that now we can keep using it in the different subsequent functions. Something that you need to take note there. So here now we create the book component blade, whereby now we get to see this this form in action. So remember, we have our book component blade, which is this one here. So now this code here, I'm just going to copy it from this Sublime text here, because this is TailwindCSS, and we are dealing with the backend. So having to type all this to take time and explaining all this, but this is just TailwindCSS. And TailwindCSS is a utility. It has utility type based type of syntax, whereby the CSS is normally within the HTML itself. So here I'm going to copy this one here, and what I'll need to do here from where I've copied, we need to have the two root diffs like this. So let me just take these ones out, and then I'm going to paste that code here. Now what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to add the backend code for this given form here. Now the first part here is we have the X data. X data is Alpine.js, which of course, remember, we set is open to be false. So by default is open is false, and unless now we set it to be true based on the given logic that we want to do. So the first part here I'm going to do is that I'm going to have is open like this, and then I'm going to use as a particular concept here, which is called entangle, which is going to ensure that we can open, that is, we can manage the model by opening and closing this given model here. So here I'm going to take this one out, and then here I'm going to have at entangle like this, and then here I'm going to have server space there, and then here I'm going to have is model open like that. So we're going to have is, so that is what you're going to have here. So here we ensure that we can open and close the model by setting this entangle, which is a live wire functionality. Now once we are done with that one, we can come here and set the button to open the model so that we can add a new book details. Remember, this is the button add a new book. So here what I'm going to do here is that, remember here we have set is open, and then here we have set is true. So what we're going to do here, after the true here, this is what we do here. We're going to have something like this. So we are going to say at this, and then dot set here will have is model, and then open like that. We're going to have it this way, and then here I'm going to set this one to be true like that. So here I've just set this one to be true, and then here we close this one like that. So here we are saying the button click is open, and then here we pass is equals to true, and then at this, which is a LiveWire functionality, we are going to set this one to be true, so that when the person clicks this given function, remember we said by default it is false, but then we have the show model whereby it is set to true. So when the person clicks, that function should be called so that the form can be open. Now let's go downwards. Here we also have different other functionality. The other one here is we are going to have this, there's this fade in transition effect when the form gets open. So when the form gets open, there's this transition effect here. So this one is handling that given by using the Alpine.js. We have the X clock and X show, which is open, and then it gives this transition effect. So down there, we are going to leave that one, and then we're going to go down there. So the other part here is whereby we have the H5 here. Now where we have the H5 here, we can either edit the book or we can add a new book. So here we are going to do some editing here. So what we're going to do here is, because we can edit or add a book, I'm going to take that one out like that, and then I'm going to have this two like this. Let's have some space, and then now inside here I'm going to call is editing book ID. Remember we created this one. I'm going to pass this conditional operator, and then here we're going to have at edit space edit book, first one, and then we're also going to check if the book is, we are either adding a new book. So here we have that, and then that's what we have there. This is simple. So here we are basically what we are doing is that we display edit book if we are editing an existing book, or otherwise we are adding a new book here. Right, so going down there, we have the next one. There is, we have a button for closing the given form here. Now this button here, we have, it is set to click is open, and then is equals to false. Now what you're going to do here is very simple. Just like we did for when we are opening the button here, we are also going to set something similar like this one here that we add. So I may just copy this one here, and then here, this is what we are going to do. So we have set this one is set to false, and then here we're going to copy this. So we're going to say at this set, so model is open, and then here we are going to set this one to false like this. So basically this means that now we are able to close, or the model is able to be closed in this given manner here. So this is what we have here, right? So here we have this one like this, and then we close it with this, and then here we are going to pass this Arial, and then here we're going to say is equals to close so that we can close our given form like that. So that is what we have there. Now we can go downwards, and the rest part we are going to do is there's a form here. This form now is the one that we are going to fill out the given data. So we have title, author, journal, published date. So what I want us to do here is on the form here, we are going to pass the wire submit like this, and here we're going to say, let's just use the double quotes. So here we're going to say here we'll have this. So we're going to have this. We're going to say editing book ID, and then this is what we have. So here we could be updating the book. So we're going to pass update book, or we could be saving the given book. So that is what we have there. So you just need to have this one like that, and then we are good to go there. So here we just have this, and then now here within the title fields, this is what we need to do, because we need to find out if we have errors within the given. So for example, let's just begin with the title. So within the title here, we'll have, of course, here we have the input type text. Now beneath here the input type text, and then here we have the border rounded. So what we can do here is just come in here, we can set this wire model like this, and then here we say, using now our form object, we are going to say book, then form dot title like that. So because here we are using the data binding, because of course from our given book form property, remember these are the properties, and then this is what we are saving here. So when the person types the title of the book, we are now binding that data within our component. So we have book form dot title, and that's how we do it when we are using the form objects. And then just beneath it, for the end div, we are going to have at error, and then here we are going to have so we have book form dot title like that, and then here we have span the class, and then now the other one is just the tailwind, and here I'm going to have text red, and then 500. This is just for the error message. Then here we have text, and then SM, and then here we closed like that, and then here we display if there's any error message here, and then this is a variable, so we are going to pass that one that, and then give it some space like that. So after that we can end our span, and as well as we end at end error. So that is what we have, and then of course the div is that way. So now once we have that one, we are going to do the same case for the outer. So I'm just going to copy this one, and then just after the rounded, I'm going to paste that one, and I'm going to change this one to book form dot outer like that. I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to do the same. So here we're going to have add for journal like that, and also have for the published date, so which is going to be published and then underscore date like that. Right, so now that is what we have so far, and we also have there's something else. Sorry, this should be that way. So we also have the error, so we're also I'm going to copy the error, and here I'm going to paste this one like this. So here I'm going to change this one to outer. I'm also going to do the same here. I'm going to paste this one, and I'll change this one to journal like that one. and here I'm also going to do the same thing, and this one I'll change this one to published date. So underscore published date, like that, and that's what we have here. All right, so that is what we have so far. So I believe we are following up, and so once we do that, now the other item here is to update is to go to the submit button. So let's just go down here. Now within the submit button, we also have the add or update. So it can be changed, either we are adding or we are editing the book. So what we need to do here is on this part here, I'm going to take this one out, and once I take that one out, I'm going to pass this to, sorry, so it's here, so I'm going to pass this to, and here I'm going to pass either we are editing the book, editing book ID, like this. We pass our conditional operator, and then here we pass the update, and then here we pass the add. So that is on the, and then here we have the book. All right, so that is what we have. So editing book ID, and that's what we have. Now once we are done with that one, we can now have our flash session message, and this one should happen at somewhere here. So this is, so let me just copy this one quickly. Okay, so this is the code for the flash message. Of course, this is coming from here. The flash message, that is the session flash message, is this one here. So this is just, it's going to check if there's the message that is set, and then it's going to flash it based on what we have kept here. Now, so the next part here after that one is we have the book title out there, and then now here, just down here after the T body, we now have we are now going to use a for loop. That is a for each loop, and then here we're going to have at for each, like this, and then we're going to call the books variable as book. So here what we want is we want to loop over the entire array of our books within our database and to be able to display them. So the first part here where we have the sample title is what now we are going to write the code here. So we are going to have the first one is at book, and this one should not be that way, it should be this way. So here the first one is going to be at book, and then here we access the book title, can copy this and paste them just like this. So we have that one, and then journal, and then we have our given date. Now here we just change, so here we can just change this one to outer, and then here we can change this to, so this one is journal, and then lastly we have for published underscore date, like that. So since that is what we have there, so the last part is we have now is we have the edit, and then we also have the delete. So when the person clicks on edit, of course we want him to be taken to edit the book. So what we need to do here is on the button class here, this is what we need to have. So this is what we need to do. So here we need to add a button, and then wire click, like this, and then you're going to say it is equal to this is just double quotes, and then edit book, and then here we have, this is what we have. So we have these two, and then here we say we pass the book ID, like that, and this one is just closed that way. So when the person clicks, it will be taken to the ID of that given book. Now we also do the same thing for the edit. So we are also going to copy this one, then I'm going to paste it there, because we are doing this one because this is now the backend. So here we call the delete book function. Remember, they are all in our component that we created. So here we delete the given book by calling the book ID like that, and then that's what we have here. So this is now the edit and the delete. All right, so once we do that, here we are going to have at end, and this is end for each, like that. And of course now that is now our backend, which is associated with our form here. Now before we go further, we can run our PHP artisan to check what is happening so far. PHP artisan serve. All right, and before we do that, there is something that we need to set up, and that setup we'll do in the next section. Now with LiveWire 3 we can render components directly, unlike the way we had with LiveWire 2. So what we can do here is, before now, because I had run this PHP artisan but I had forgotten, we had not set up the web routes. So here, for example, when you look at this example here, it means that this component can be accessed directly within a web route. So what we need to do here is we can do something like this. Actually, before we run that layout, let's just come to our web routes. Now within our web routes here, since this is the component we are working with, I can just come here and have a route like this. Now within this route here, this is what we can do. So for example, look at this one. So we have the route and then the get, and then, so let me just copy this and paste it here. So we have this. I'm going to define this. I'm going to change this as books, and then here I'm going to change this as the component that we have already, and then here I believe this class should be imported automatically. So now, since that's what we have, it means now we can access this component. So because we need this slot so that we can access this component individually, and by default it doesn't come with LiveWire 3, so I can just come here. Let me just destroy that and then run this. So this component, this command creates the app led.layout, which is now this slot here. So with this one here, it means that now here I can come and run my back and run my PHP artisan serve like this. And once I do that, I can come here and access this through the 128. And then here I go to books like this. Right, so here we just have some few so for example, what we have in here is now the error for this type of error, which is the for each argument, is that on the render function here, we need to pass this. So we need to have this, and then here we need to pass books, which is equals to the model. And then here at also, it means that here we are now returning we are simply calling the books variable, which of course it's a property that we defined here, that of course is now returning all the books that we have within our given model. Of course, the model which represents the given table. So we don't have any issue with this part here. And let's try this again. So we can see so far this is what we have. We have title, journal, publish date, and then the action. So let's see if we try to click, and you can see it is now able to give us our given form here. Now we don't have the styling, because what we need to do here is that we need to come to our app blade here, and just we need here is whereby we should be having our styles like this. So we have something like this. Sorry, what we have, and then here we need to have this script. Need to have a script. Now here I'm using an external TailwindCSS functionality. So here I'm using the external one. So here I'm going to have this So this is what I need to have. So this is what I have. So I paste that one there, and then I close that one, and then here we're going to have the script, which we are going to close that way. Now once I have that one set, it means that now it is able to locate this, and I can also even change the page title and write this as CRUD app, something like that. So it means that when I reload this component, the Tailwind CSS styling should be now applied to this given. So when I click this one, you can see now it is able to show us the model pop-up. So we can go ahead and we can also check if the validation rules are working, and you can see they are working well. So here we can type a given book. So for example, programming in PHP, author is Brian, and then journal is programming, and then the date here is, so let's just have that one, and then let's add this, and you can see it is adding this. But now there's an issue here, is because as we add this one, this success message is not disappearing here. So what we need to do is that we need to add something we call the polling feature within LiveWire, because this one is not going to disappear. So what I need to do is access the book component blade here like this, and then what I'll need to do here is just come on this part here as the wire, and then here I'm going to say wire poll, and then dot 5, and then I can give it, for example, 5 seconds. And what wire poll does within LiveWire 3 is that it is able to re-render your component so as to give you the updated data within your given component, and that's what it all does. So that means that when I save this again, and let's come back here and let's try to add another book. So for example, here I add let's just have a random date. Now what will happen is that this success message should disappear after 5 seconds because of this polling feature here. Let's check for editing. You can see that we can edit, so we can edit this one to C++, and it is working, as well as we can as well delete this, and it is working. Right guys, so if you have liked this video, please like, share this video, and let's meet in the next one.